So welcome, Chris,
Thank you.
and thank you so much for being with us today.
Pleasure to be
Okay,
here.
so yep. So let's get it started. I have a lot of questions lined up, and I'm sure they all do as well. So I'll get straight to it. So when COVID-19 started, we all know that literally everyone was panic buying, right? So I have two questions right away for you. First, what were the changing consumer behavior patterns that Nestle immediately saw with your customers? And how did your e-com channel quickly adapt to this, which enabled Nestle to succeed during the pandemic?
Yeah, so certainly there was probably two phases of what happened within COVID. So firstly was the initial wave of panic buying that people were ensuring that they were filling pantry, getting their toilet paper, or a rush on, on I've lost the word already, but antiseptic and things like that. So there was a kind of initial thing of I'm running out of food. There was a sort of an uncertainty of what was happening in the landscape of COVID. So that brought on a little bit of pantry, or a lot of pantry stocking, that people want to get those staples, and those probably longer life staples that would last them at least the security of 2 to 3 months. So we started to see in categories like pasta, noodles, long life milks, these types of pet food, just ensuring that enough people had enough stock in their pantry to survive them, whatever the future was going to look like. And at that stage, no one, we're getting into March here, no one really had a lot of idea of what was going to take place. We only had a real view of the lens of other markets, Europe, Asia, where it had taken off a little bit before it arrived in Australia. So there's probably that sort of short-term sort of consumption habit that was very unusual and unnatural to what was going to precurse what was going to happen. I think the longer term of what we saw was then the behaviors changed as people were in home more, the consumption habits changed. So cafes were closed, so people started to drink in-home coffee more, or they were looking at restaurants were closed, so they were looking at much more preparation of meals. What was also happening that time was kids not going to school. So what do we do with them? In-home schooling was going up. So people started to have, well, how do I keep them busy? So baking emerged as a category for us as well. So that was sort of more in-home consumption habits based off either people working from home, not going to a physical work, or some of the disruption that happened in more of a physical behavioral world. What also happened was then more longer term, people started to exercise more as a family. So, hey, let's get a pet. So puppy sales started to go up, kitten sales. So then the pet business started to improve, or not that they weren't doing well, but then they started to see a big spike in new puppy and kitten ownership. So servicing those people as well that were buying pets for the first time. So that was also another consumption change that happened as a result of being home more.
Okay, so given that quick changes in the behavior of consumers now, how did the e-com channel of Nestle quickly adapt to this? And what were the initiatives that you did in order to really adapt to these behaviors of the consumers?
Yeah, well, if you see if you ever follow LinkedIn, you see the numbers in the US and the UK of the growth of online. We experience a slightly different impact here. We have quite large in FMCG businesses in our retailers, so supermarkets, Woolworths, Coles. If you actually remember, they had to close their online offerings for a period of time because the availability of stock is linked generally from their website to the store, because they do click and collect, they do local delivery. So actually we went out of business in online for about, for 70 or 80% of our businesses during the months of March and April. So we had to quickly pivot to retailers that were staying open to make sure that those retailers had stock. So I'm talking about pure play retailers in the pet specialty, as well as Amazon, We were lucky enough in New Zealand as well to have Countdown in New Zealand, which is the Woolworths equivalent there, to stay open during this time. So it was really firstly identifying what channels still were available to us to drive. We had some direct to consumer businesses, very specific to category in pet, baby, coffee, and we were able to actually put efforts to those channels to make sure we could process orders, get them out. We started to get a huge volume and spike in sales. So again, putting efforts and resources in customer service, as well as marketing efforts, transition of financial payments and things like that, to be able to get product out the door and to people, because there was obviously a lot of, particularly in categories like nutrition, where mothers were really panicked to get their product for their kids. So that was something that we had to really drive as well. And then as customers started to reopen up their efforts, like Woolworths and Coles, getting stock back to them and prioritising them as well to then get them back into a level of stock. We're quite lucky that we have a lot of local manufacturing on products like Milo, Nescafe, Uncle Toby's, but we also have a long global supply chain on some other categories like pod coffee and things like that. So we have to balance out what we can deliver to those people and get the stock that when we've reached unprecedented volume of stock.
Okay, that sounds interesting. You mentioned something about how you also dealt with marketing initiatives, right? And so what were the marketing initiatives throughout these past months that you felt really made an impact to e-commerce specifically?
Yeah, it was, I think, from a pure marketing perspective, when you have all these things in place, in plan, when you work so far out as a business, you don't expect something like this to happen. So it's firstly evaluating what are those. So a lot of our businesses do things like events, sampling, those things will all suddenly have to be stopped because, one, from a COVID related issue, but also just for a footfall traffic as well. There's not going to be the people at the train station or the supermarket that you were running these events. So it was a quick pivot to those things that were going to be not relevant to the situation. Then really looking at, well, what are the opportunities as well? So while Nestle has food categories that have gone up in this time, there's been other categories and businesses that have really been challenged through this time. So if you're in QSR, in restaurants, in travel, they've had to cut budget pretty quickly in some of this as well. So there are partners and media agencies that are really looking for those who are investing during this time. So we were able to pivot quite quickly to look at editorial content, leveraging MasterChef, Bachelor, that were already in production. So that would be something that we were able to put efforts into and really look at some of the content. So while screen time was going up, it's getting the right format of editorial, because you just can't push TVC and expect to be that engaging during this period as well. So you had to look at some of those things, and were they relevant to the topics at the time? So particularly for something like pet, you want to be talking about the new introduction of a puppy and the nutritional value or information that they might need during this period of time as well. So it's really then looking at what content you're developing relevant to the consumer behaviors or what they're going to be looking for. And then we also wanted to drive some engagement as well in social, and explore different avenues for that. So we were testing with things with Milo, with TikTok, Snapchat with KitChat. So we're trying to find other things that people were bored at home and they were trying to definitely keep interested as well. So even for something like Milo, we had a lot of engagement with our AFL partnership, but there were no games being played. So how did you keep that sort of information going around keeping active, what you can do each day, and having daily activities to do with parents and kids together. So we developed a lot of those types of content. So from just a pure digital perspective, certainly that's what we focused on. From an e-commerce perspective, we definitely looked at adjusting some of our content. We had some business to business, our professional business had a lot of formats that we needed to quickly push to in home and get people like looking at opportunities within cooking. So we had to adjust some of what our content looked like on Amazon to have recipes, to be far more looking at what that might look like. We were able to launch a bunch of things on Woolworths and Coles that were very topical to what's for dinner, improving a number of recipes, because everyone really struggles with that normally, let alone having to cook lunch, dinner at home now. So putting those in place, we launched a What's Baking section on Coles, as well as a coffee house on Coles as well. So we were able to quickly move these things through to, I guess, be more targeted and relevant to what people were going through at this time. And also keeping in mind that there was an economic potential challenge to people who are out of work or had the stress of they're not sure about the financial viability. So ensuring that we were communicating weekly deals and promotions as they came back online as well. So that was also probably another pivot pretty quickly to make sure that we were being as communicative of our value at that time as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, I'm sure that with regards to people being at home, a lot of your customers will be doing TikTok or Facebook or whatever social media initiatives that you have, because people are bored at home, definitely. Yeah,
certainly that's as a result, people screen time went up. We all can only watch so many Netflix shows. I think it probably expanded everything you could possibly watch. So yeah, certainly it's a good time, it's maybe not a great time for the world, but it's certainly, we still need to take a moment to find ways to enjoy ourselves in the moments that we can with family and friends and things like that. So that's certainly always something of a brand consideration too, that the more that we can be doing those types of things where it's engaging and it's people are sort of taking their mind off things even for a short time, it's a benefit, I think, to the consumers.
Yeah. So, given that, we all know that customers panic, they change their behaviors and all that. But with regards to the retailers that obviously you constantly deal with, given that most of your products are pretty much sold through retailers, right?
Okay.
So how did they react towards everything that's happening with the consumers and all that? And how did you manage this reaction of theirs?
I think very positively from what I saw across the board. I think they realized when there was challenges that they had on fulfillment, and that's why they had to close, because they needed to get organized. And I think you saw some examples of, say, Woolworths, that were able to open up pretty quickly. They first focused on the most in need. So you saw them open up with very focused boxes to elderly. They were able to, and these not necessarily had our products in them, but I thought that they did that really well to get the most vulnerable and most in need, who are really worried and couldn't get to a physical store, that they were able to be prioritized. They were then able to probably accelerate the amount of delivery time slots and priority hubs that they had of fulfillment. You see this now a little bit in this space, that they're not just picking from physical stores anymore. They're actually picking from closed fulfillment locations, and they were closing some stores and picking straight from these ones without customers in them as well. Convenience and petrol, you saw that no one was filling up their car, no one was driving for a period of time. They were actually able to open a store pretty quickly in 7-Eleven. BP already had an offering, and they were able to accelerate sort of their efforts connecting with Uber Eats, and we were able to partner with them to develop a grocery offering within those channels pretty quickly as well. So when you are faced with some of these challenges in a customer lens, you've really got to look at, well, what's the disruption happening to my channel, and what can I do to at least maintain some offering. There were some things that we really were challenged with. The traditional professional side of our business that deals with universities, restaurants, hotels. Certainly, there was probably not a lot they could do at that period of time, but we were able to really focus our energies on the B2C side of things and deal with that. So as customers came back online, working with them on getting promotional activity reloaded, fixing where there was out of stocks or voided systems and things like that, where potentially like you got below a certain line of availability. So just working with them on getting the right stocking and monitoring those subcategories that potentially are still out of stock. We're still trying to get noodles back into the market. We made progress on that, but that's certainly one of the categories that have probably been most impacted from a stock availability. And then, just working on maintaining a good communication with the retailers as well. When they're wanting to place orders for an Amazon, they'll work off an automated supply chain. It'll just keep reordering. But working with the vendor managers about when to order and what to order, it just helps maintain a bit more confirmation of what they've ordered to what we can deliver to them, and making sure that we update them on that. So that working through supply chain, customer teams, it's all important to maintain a good communication and priority during this time, because that certainly is the sort of the key focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so supply chain definitely is a big deal for e-commerce nowadays. And so given this, what was your strategy shift in e-commerce because of all of this?
Yeah, I think the focus firstly was to service those channels that we could deliver to. So it wasn't probably a major shift brought on by a strategy change, but more of a prioritization at the time. What we're probably looking at now in a shift of focus is we know now there's probably a different consumer that's coming in to our. We had quite a large last year, say B2B business. A lot of that business at the moment is in probably in decline, if not on hold, because the traditional businesses that would be ordering through the retail channels, large formats, offices, for example, if you had a pantry office stacked with products like Milo, Nescafe, breakfast cereals, people aren't going into the physical office. So those things aren't being consumed. So I guess our first pivot was to more B2C focus. And as older consumers were starting to purchase online for the first time during this period as well, because it usually was a very under-indexed segment of the market, focusing our efforts on making sure that now we weren't just talking to young bustling families, that we were putting together programs that made sense to sort of older Australians as well, and the types of products they like to consume as well. So putting together different multi-buys and different product related bundles as well. So that would be another thing. But then certainly then looking to accelerate the next tier of customers that were making sort of announcements of they're coming into this space. So I mentioned 7-Eleven, Big W, Catch of the Day, these types of ones that now have an online footprint that consumers were now going to, making sure that we had, we are developing a good strategic alignment with those customers to then start to move forward with growth as well, because we certainly want to be winning in as many customers as we can as well. So they're probably the major shifts in our focus strategy for the short term, but keeping our eye more also on long-term gains as well into 2021 and beyond.
Now that you mentioned 2021 and beyond, how do you envision the future of retail, well, in general, and for Nestle specifically?
Yeah, well, I think the onset of COVID has brought new consumers into the channel, particularly FMCG and grocery. It's always been a very low end of the online share of sales. So I've worked in beauty and cosmetics, much higher, upwards of 20% in some markets, 30% probably now. Fashion, electronics. When you're dealing with grocery, it has tended to be in single digits still. And for a period of time, it stayed in there. There are reasons for that, because generally people didn't want to order within a 3 or 4 hour window of product, have that sit on the outside of their house. They certainly wanted to touch and feel some of the product, but there are also some real challenges in delivery of that. So I think what's accelerated this is the strategic focus of our retailers that want to win in this, and they've really dialed up their efforts in collection, delivery slots, reducing the hours that you have to wait for product to arrive. So I think the future is going to just maintain people's shopping within the channel, because older Australians also have come into the channel, and if they form habits after 4 or 5 shops, I think they'll stay with it as well. So I think you'll start to see a lot of the barriers to those purchases, whether that was shipping costs or too difficult. I think some of those have been breached by this sort of, I have to do it this way, otherwise I can't get my food. So that's probably going to be one that you're going to see a continued acceleration of probably online penetration of the channel. I think there'll always be probably, once it opens up, still a push to more collection services than home delivery, mainly because of cost. It's a much more costly business model for the retailers to have to deliver it all the way to someone's door, and then there's challenges with trucks and delivery of that. So I would say that that's going to be, you'll see much more contactless collection innovation coming, of whether that's at more of a collection point or a physical supermarket. So I can only see that increasing in the next sort of 2 or 3 years, where you'll just arrive, and you're already seeing some of this. Pet Barn introduced some of this, where you could just, as you pulled up, someone came out to your boot and you didn't have to get out of your car. So I think you'll start to see a lot more of that click and collect, but contactless delivery, because I think people just don't want to have to physically get out of the car, go to the thing, wait in line. I think people are just sort of past that now, that they'll just want it how they want it, and make it easy to collect it. Product range, I think the future is going to be more not constrained by the physical. So usually physical supermarkets, on a planogram, you only have so many slots that you're available. What we're seeing in the US and UK is much more virtual ranges that are not constrained to the physical. So usually you get one product in, one product out, maybe on a new launch. There'd be thousands more products that you can launch with online, and you not have to have it in a physical store. So I can only see this increasing as well. So we have to really think around the different of niche or hyper ranges that we might develop for online, and could be larger formats, it could be exclusives, it could be a number of things as well, a number of different brands as well. So I'd say that's probably also going to be a thing that we really want to look at in the coming years as well. As you are not sort of working through a traditional lens of ranging. Amazon, for example, we can range with whatever we like without real intervention from the customer. Then it's up to us and the customer to work through what's a profitable SKU and what's a volume driving SKU for them. But usually it's not the traditional way of that physical ranging that you might go through.
All right. So one last question for me, and then we'll open the floor to the others. So how can you differentiate the offline and online shopping experience now for Nestle customers?
Differentiate online. Well, I think when you're in control of the relationship, and that's when you have a D2C business, and some of you may be on businesses that have that, you can certainly own that relationship. And we've certainly tried to do that in customization and personalization, because we believe when we have a direct business, to do the same thing that is in retail is really adding no value to the consumer. And if not, it's not actually doing it as well as what they can get elsewhere in terms of delivery and service. So that's probably one area that you can really focus on, of going, well, what's that relationship, the value exchange that someone signed up to you from, to hear from, what differentiation of products. So say Kit Kat Chocolatory for us, it's where you can go get a personalized, customizable Kit Kat. Right? You can share it as a gift, you can have it for yourself. You can't get that in a physical Woolworths or 7-Eleven. We don't have that experience. So that's probably one aspect of ensuring that you can then differentiate. I think with the online piece now, people, if they're not going to a physical, they want more information around the product. So probably traditionally, you might have had one image of the product, you might have had some copy, making that more visually interesting, or providing a bit more relevance, either through recipe creation or use of that product, but also more detail around people having far more nutritional needs, or I'm allergic to something now, so they want to get that information much faster. Or if I'm not trying the coffee for the first time, what is it? Is it a good blend for me? Is it dark? Is it light roast? Is it where's the product from, and what does this mean? So trying to storytell a little bit more through content is another way to differentiate the online experience, because you're going to get people who are not physically touching and feeling the product, or maybe sampling the product physically that they might have done previously. So now you've got to really tell that story, particularly on a new product, of why these products are different, or why they should try that for the first time. So that's probably a real challenge in online, to build up that new product volume. We usually, in a physical store, you'll get an end cap, big end cap of something, just people will try it. It's really a challenge to get into the basket for the first time, particularly on new product. So that we've got to look at different mechanics that we can do to encourage people to try the product and then to repurchase.
Okay, yeah, actually very interesting, because when you go in the grocery, you always see like this huge posters of the brand and all that.
Oh, there's huge posters, or there's huge just mountains of stock built up, enticing you to try it, or to give it a go. And then there's usually a lot of communication that goes around that. If it's new and it's try this, it's got caramel in it, or it's protein, or whatever the differentiator of that new product is. But with online, it's usually when you go on there in lollies or something, there'll be a single image of the product with the same image of snakes. So how do you elevate a little bit of that, just to bring either it's new or it's different, or there's something interesting enough to try it on.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Chris, for answering my question. A lot of questions from me. So now for the rest of the evening, I will open the floor to anyone who wants to ask questions.
Yeah, so do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Rodrigo.
Okay. Yeah, hi, Chris. I think the connection is better right now. I would like to ask you, from your perspective, what's the biggest challenge you have ahead for e-commerce in Nestle? And having in mind what your competition is doing as well, and maybe some of those competitors are ahead of you in this game. Maybe considering that Nestle was more focused on the real retail rather in the e-commerce side, from my perspective. So what's the biggest challenge, and how you're facing that in this moment for the future years?
Yeah, I think for a company like Nestle, well, the positive thing is probably our competitors are all in the same space a little bit, because they all play fairly much in the same zone. So, they're all probably building capability around this. I think we've had probably a sustained period of success within online, and not just this year. So always trying to find and lead what's new. That's certainly, as people catch up to a lot of things that we've done as well, is certainly probably the next challenge that is in front of us, of saying, well, what does the future look like, and guide some of that future, whether that's subscription, personalized nutrition, the impact of things like voice search. So some of these are maybe not here yet, but I'd say it's really navigating the future of what that looks like. And then staying relevant to sort of the next wave of sort of consumers, whether that's sort of millennial Gen Zs as well, who might not be, drinking soluble coffee, for example. You're in categories that are potentially in decline, or not really relevant to sort of those age groups as well. So still, ensuring that there's a pipeline of product that's coming through, but you're communicating that from a relevancy perspective of online. And then where do they shop? You know, do the next generation of shoppers, are they shopping on Coles and Woolworths? Are they recruiting, or are they shopping elsewhere? And where are they shopping, or where are they finding products? And keeping pace with that, because yeah, certainly the volume of that sort of main business is always something that we need to be driving, but then we need to be developing and cultivating the next, you know, development of what that looks like. So to your point, you know, at the moment, D2C for us, yeah, it's very much focused on very single category, personalized, customized offerings. But what's the future look like for that as well? And where do we put our resources when we only have a sort of finite number of that? So that's probably the sort of the focus. And then maybe from an organizational perspective, as we build this growth, to make sure that it's embedded across marketing category, we're taking the insights from the online shopper and we're utilizing those, because probably traditionally we look at offline performance and we know how those work, but we don't know enough around the consumer, around shopping missions, and ensuring that we have that right data for us to utilize that to build strategy and product or specific products. So that's probably the other area of probably real focus for me in the coming years.
Yeah, just another question, very fast. Are you working already in social commerce regarding like the new generations and the boom that this new way of selling is occurring in different countries? In China?
Yeah, look, obviously China are at an advantage because they have a platform like WeChat, and Japan has Line, or Taiwan, Thailand as well. So some of those are far more integrated into the commerce component. So yeah, you could ship out samples, you could generate a sign up, you could then get them to purchase, and it's all integrated into the payment. We're probably not quite there yet, but you certainly can see Instagram, Facebook, they're making big plays into this because they certainly want to be winning some of the online business and not losing it to an Amazon, for example. So I can only say that they'll probably, yeah, we'll explore and test those types of things. We'll find what's the best entry into that and the right tests. But certainly integration into the retail is going to be important for some of these things to take place for us to then really transact. Because as I said, we only have a certain amount of D2C businesses. So that's certainly probably the next phase of what needs to happen, of integration between us, social platforms and retailers, to make the journey much more seamless.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for the talk. It's very interesting to see, how Nestle can, quickly pivot and adapt to the situation. You've mentioned about how Nestle is moving toward serving more like B2C model to customer. So I was wondering, what do you see in terms of the structure between, let's say, the Nestle e-commerce own store and the volumes coming from e-retailers like Amazon, Coles? Because I understand that if you have your own store, then it's a lot easier for you to collect data and try to understand the customer and customize and personalize the offer. But at the same time, they're a lot more costly to maintain the own store. And like this. So how do you see that structure in the future?
Yeah, it's always an important financial question, not just financial, but role of channel. I think I usually start with. So coming from beauty and cosmetics, we had a very big D2C business because people were comfortable buying one item. That was say a moisturizer or a lipstick, and it was a pre-planned purchase or sort of an impulse purchase, but they're willing to buy one thing and have it arrive. Will they order one pack of noodles on? No, probably not. So it's kind of like you have to look at it from a role first of the channels and define what those roles are. Then you look at the financial viability of any D2C and say, well, what does the role of this look like? If it's a sort of a multi-Nestle approach, will consumers shop that way? There are some globally. We've got ones in Hong Kong. We've got some ones in other markets of having a sort of a multi-approach to Nestle products. My personal opinion is that's probably not where I'd first go because I just don't feel the consumer behavior is going to shop just a Kit Kat Maggi noodle and then a coffee, and then that's it. And then they'll do their shopping elsewhere. We're a part of a broader basket. That's always going to be a component of what we need to look at from a grocery perspective. When they're in Amazon, it might be slightly different because people are in Prime. They're able to order one thing and get it shipped to them. So they're willing to buy that sort of one-off coffee pod or cereal box and be fine with that. So again, that's part of the sort of the Amazon distribution model. But to answer your question, yeah, we have to look at those types of things because from a cost to serve, you have to sort of weigh up, are you getting enough value at the sort of the sales to then offset some of that other piece of cost to serve? And then does that D2C play a broader role of a brand halo effect as well? Does it play a role within talkability? Does it offer something differentiated? We've tried different things with Allen's as well as Kit Kat. So these types of things play a broader role than just the financial numbers on a page as well. So, and you're totally correct, the collection of first-party data and ownership, FMCG companies generally have not owned that relationship. We certainly want to have a value exchange with our consumers as well, and then be agnostic to where they probably want to shop as well. So we do want to build that database, and we are making efforts to sort of build that focus, because first-party data also will help enable media efficiency, much more loyalty, targeting and insights based off what people are or not engaging with. So we want to have a little bit of that. That will pay off, I think, for better execution through customer line as well.
Yep, thank you.
Chris, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for a very nice session, and nice to meet you as well. My question is related to customer loyalty. And it's basically because obviously with COVID-19, many people nowadays are driven by price, right? And even though Nestle stands out by, a variety of products and the quality and, brand awareness and brand power, right? Many people, because of price, are trying maybe to choose maybe some other products, right? The thing is, obviously with e-commerce, because people are trying to avoid, shopping face to face, going to shops or to stores, right? And I just remember you have a very nice experience with customers when you go to the Nespresso shops, which is really great. You can just create loyalty with them because you have the experience. But because many people are trying to avoid that experience because of the face to face contact, right? How do you think you can just improve customer loyalty with clients? First of all, because people are driven by price at the moment, but also because people are avoiding buying face to face. So how do you face, let's say, this sort of customer loyalty under a COVID-19 environment?
Yeah, I think firstly, from the brand comms perspective, it's not pulling back during this time. We're actually investing in a lot of the brands during this time to stay top of mind, to be relevant, to engage consumers. So I think that's probably the first thing that we've tried to do during this time. That's certainly, whilst other parts of our business is certainly impacted, but to build that relationship and to still keep that element of engagement, whether that's through Kit Kat, Milo, or Maggi, or whoever. So Maggi certainly tried to this time focus more on recipe creation and inspiration, and even through the comms line there. So that's probably, a good way to maintain during this time, and not just, well, we'll see you later in when things get better sort of thing. So that's probably the sort of the first area of what I would sort of say that we've done when it comes to loyalty. Obviously, when they're not physically going to the store, look, that was a period of time, and maybe Victoria is far worse it is than others. So there's still sort of an interaction between in-store and online. So certainly we were investing in search during that time as well, that people could still find our products. It wasn't paying off from a return on ad spend perspective, but they were able to say, well, I can actually find this product and go into store and get it, or I can buy it online, sort of thing as well. So that sort of area of what we try to do, and then be on probably the front foot when it comes to D2C of things. If we were out of stock of something, trying to be a bit more proactive around, hey, we're working on it. And I think people are understanding at that time as well that, not necessarily they were getting that angry. They were trying to find stock, but yeah, I think what people are sort of understanding, but being proactive around the communication when you're out of stock of something to say, hey, we're working on it. I know you had a subscription or something like that, but we're trying to do our best and get it to you in a reasonable time. So I think, yeah, through your customer service team, critically important to, I think, build that sort of touchstone that people can get a hold of you, you can respond quickly, and you can give them the information they need. But it was fairly much around stock availability. Certainly that was many of the cases that our customer team were inundated with.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have a question?
Sure.
Hi, Chris. Hi, my name is Lei Peng. Thanks so much for the presentation today. It's always great to learn from the industry, people who are doing it every day and coming in to share with us all the challenges and all the latest, you know, and I really appreciate these sessions. And also like the fact that the tone of your presentation is so positive, because I think what you have shared with us is just COVID might be a crisis, but it has created so much opportunities for Nestle, for yourself, and it's all about how you have actually pivoted the strategy to, I mean, it's not the right word to use, but then it's almost like exploiting the situations, right? And I love that tone. And I just wonder, all the changes that you have cited, I've seen in terms of consumer behavior, if there's anything that you think that will have actually changed forever, like if this will sustain even post-COVID into the future. I just wonder, you know, from your professional point of view, if you have seen that, you know, yeah, this change is going to be forever. That's my first question. And actually, I do have a second question. Okay. And the second,
I wrote it down, so I always forget the first one.
Sorry?
I said I wrote it down because I always forget the first one.
Okay,
and then let's answer the second one.
I'll remind you. It was just that the second one, I was just curious. I mean, for all of us here, we can brag about we survived COVID in the sense that, you know, professionally, you know, we, even as a student, as a teacher, as a manager, as a director, we survived COVID. I just wonder, what would you tell your children and grandchildren that, you know, what are the key lessons that you have learned through this very challenging time? Just on the personal level, I'm interested to know, because obviously it is not easy to be in your positions, all right, dealing with supply issue, pressures from consumer, pressures from everywhere, and yet, you know, you're doing so well. And I'm just curious to know, what have you learned that you could actually share with all of us?
Okay. No, they're great questions. Look, I think firstly, before I get to the first question, I worked in Asia for 6 years, and while this is very different to anything that anybody's ever been through, I think there were certainly times where different countries were impacted with a bunch of different things, whether that was political, environmental. There were floods in Thailand. There was the tsunami that came out in Japan. There was actually some political challenges and economic challenges of, say, the ringgit devaluation in Malaysia. There were some political issues in Thailand that, you know, there was, so through your business career, there was always going to be challenges that you're going to have to deal with. So I think it's firstly, you know, I think initially it's ensuring that the people are well supported in the teams, because when you're in a regional office and there's a market, you need to be sensitive to what they're going through, and this one, everyone's going through it. So, you know, we all can relate, but everyone goes through it very differently as well, even with team members, that some people are actually liking being at home, and some people actually are really missing the interaction of being in the office, and others are, everyone's got a different situation because economically their husband or their wife might be out of work, or there might be. So firstly, I think you've always got to be empathetic to, you know, your team and your team, but understand that these things are going to happen whether we get past COVID or not, but it's how we deal with them, right? We have our strategies in place. How do they operate? Were they right? Hopefully you've got the ones in place, so when these things happen, you are in a good spot. But if they're not, you have to change quickly. And, you know, we have an export business that is, you know, in decline, and we have a B2B, but quickly getting out of that and going, right, what are we going to do as a team? So I think firstly, change forever. Maybe it's given people a point in time to connect more with the family. If they've been at home, maybe it's I don't know what the divorce rates are going to be like, but hopefully I think positively, like sitting down and planning a meal together and cooking together. Maybe these are some of the things that we lost a little bit when we were always eating out or getting good an Uber Eats, and hopefully those types of things have stayed a little bit. Like the renaissance of baking, you're doing it with a child usually. You're getting them interested about creating together. I think hopefully we don't lose some of that piece as we sort of open up. Hopefully get back to some normality of lifestyle. So maybe that might be something that changes forever. And I think people will appreciate of what they had before, the ability to go out and be at a party and just not bypassing those moments that, to travel again. I'd love to do that again. And then you take the next holiday. How good's it going to be when you take that next sort of trip? You're going to appreciate it much more. So hopefully we kind of get through this and, appreciate the things we have a lot more, because certainly, I'm very lucky that I get to work and from home, and so I've got a company that supports that as well. So so I think that's probably the first one. Personally, as I said, being home more. I've got a young daughter. She's 4. I've been able to spend almost a year. She goes to school, but I get to spend a lot more time with the family as well. So personally, I think that's been a real positive. It's certainly hard to navigate all the complexity of our organization via Zoom calls. That piece has certainly been more challenging to get buy-in, to follow up. You had to put a lot more trust, I think, in people to kind of take ownership and empower them to do that, because you're just not there to know physically if they're doing it or not. So personally, that's kind of what I'd say to my daughter. She'll probably understand a little bit what's going on here, but I think just try to, as best as you can, to try to stay positive around it. Reach out to people. I really think the things like "Are you okay?" are fantastic initiatives at this time to really reach out to people who are maybe not not doing it so well, and say that people are here. We're here for you if you want to listen or talk to. So again, that's probably my thoughts on that.
And I appreciate that. Thank you. And I do agree with you, to a certain extent, because of COVID, a lot of things will, I guess, reset, even in my life. And all of a sudden, even within my block, my neighbors, we start to appreciate each other a lot more. Because when you step out the door, you see someone, you go, yes, I'm seeing a human being, right? And then we started to have neighbor dropping, food at each other's door, just to make sure that we are all well. And these are the good old value that I think was missing in our life before COVID. And then I really appreciate when you said about team, supporting your team, having the family relationships, spending more time with the family, and checking on your colleagues to make sure that they are okay. I think they are all great stuff, and I really appreciate that you shared that. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, everybody, for all those questions. So we're almost running out of time, and I'm sure a lot of you have questions that you're dying to ask Chris, but unfortunately we're running out of time. So on behalf of the Marketing Club, again, we'd like to thank you, Chris, for taking time and being with us here and sharing your very insightful experiences all throughout COVID-19 with all of us. And and to that, everyone, let's all put up our glass and give a toast for Chris. Thank you so much. And good luck with everything with Nestle. And we know that you'll continue succeeding all throughout COVID-19 and in the future.
Thank you. Thanks, Monique, for organising. Good luck to everybody with their careers and with their study, and hope it all goes well. So thanks again for everyone's engagement today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And
Thanks,
Bye.
Chris.
Thanks, everybody.
hopefully next time when we meet, we will be shaking your hands.
Yes.
Maybe there's a post-COVID catch up. So how do we end on
Yes,
this?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Thank you so
We'll
much.
arrange that one. Thank
Bye.
you, everybody.
Good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Chris.